Have you ever heard a story so chilling, so utterly baffling, that it stays with you long after you've heard it? A tale that defies all logic and leaves you questioning the very fabric of reality. Today, we re-dive into one of the most terrifying and mysterious maritime legends of all time. The ghost ship SS Orang Medan. A story that begins with a desperate message and ends in a fiery, inexplicable castle. It was a sweltering morning in the South Pacific. The radio operator of the American merchant ship, the Silver Star, adjusted his headphones, listening to the familiar crackle of the shortwave. But then, a voice cut through the static, a voice that would haunt him for the rest of his days. It came in frantic bursts, an SOS from a ship named the Orang Medan. The message was horrifyingly clear. All officers, including the captain, are dead. All crew are dead, ... The operator froze. The voice was unnervingly calm for someone reporting such a disaster. There was no panic, no screaming, just a cold, factual statement. And then came the final, chilling words. I die. ... Silence. A profound, empty silence. A few seconds later, a chaotic jumble of Morse code erupted through the speakers, a meaningless spasm of dots and dashes. And then, nothing. The transmission was over. The Silver Star's operator, hands trembling, alerted his captain, Robert Hayes. Captain Hayes, a seasoned mariner with sun-scorched skin and piercing blue eyes, knew the law of the sea. When a ship calls for help, you answer. Triangulating the signal, the Silver Star changed course, steaming towards the last known position of the Orang Medan in the Strait of Malacca. 4 hours, they sailed through the deceptively calm turquoise waters, the crew scanning the horizon, searching for any sign of life or wreckage. Then, a lookout spotted it. A dark silhouette against the blinding sun. A ship, floating silently, completely motionless. As the Silver Star drew closer, the details became clearer. It was the Orang Medan. Its hull was intact. There was no sign of a fire, no collision, no missing lifeboats. It just sat there, adrift, a ghost of the waves. Captain Hayes hailed them, his voice booming across the water. No response. He blasted the ship's horn. Only silence answered back. An unsettling quiet hung over the vessel, an emptiness that felt profoundly wrong. A boarding party was assembled, led by the ship's chief engineer, Jack Turner, a determined man in his mid-30s, and accompanied by the medical officer, Dr. Evelyn Moore. As their small boat bumped against the hull of the Orang Medan, a shiver of primal fear ran through the men. They climbed the rope ladder, and the first sailor to step onto the deck stopped dead in his tracks. What they saw was a scene from a nightmare. The deck was littered with bodies, dozens of them frozen in grotesque poses of abject terror. Their mouths were wide open in silent screams, their eyes staring at some unseen horror, their hands clawed as if fending off an invisible attacker. Dr. Moore, a veteran who thought she had seen it all, knelt beside one of the bodies. I've never seen anything like it, she muttered, her analytical gaze filled with disbelief. It's as if they died of fright. There were no wounds, no blood, no signs of a struggle. They had simply died in terror. They found the captain on the bridge, rigid in his chair, his eyes fixed on something only he could see, his fingers having ripped a nautical chart to shreds. According to Dr. Moore's examination, they had been dead for only a few hours. Whatever killed them had done so with impossible speed. Right after that final, desperate radio call, Chief Engineer Turner, his face gleam suggested they check the lower decks. Maybe there were answers, or survivors, hidden below. As they pried open a hatch, a strange, heavy air escaped from the darkness. Don't they went, their flashlight beams cutting through the gloom, revealing more bodies. Engineers slumped at their posts. A cook collapsed in the galley. Each one wore the same frozen mask of pure horror. In the engine room, they found something even more bizarre. The engines were still idling, keeping the ship adrift. And then, they found the ship's dog, a German shepherd. Its body also contorted in terror, fangs bared at an unseen foe. Their search led them to the cargo hold. The door was locked from the outside. Why? What was so important it needed to be sealed? Turner forced the lock, and as the heavy door creaked open, a foul, chemical smell stung their eyes. Inside, their lights revealed rows of unmarked metal containers. But as they stood there, the ship suddenly shuddered. A wave of intense, suffocating heat rolled through the corridor, as if the very metal of the ship was coming alive. Fire, someone yelled, but it wasn't a normal fire. Smoke began to pour from invisible cracks in the walls. Everyone out. Now, Turner, Rawherd. They scrambled back through the ship, stumbling over the dead as the vessel groaned in agony around them. They burst onto the deck, into a blast furnace of heat. Flames erupted from the hatches, not rising, but shooting out sideways, in impossible directions. The rescue party barely escaped, rowing frantically away from the doomed ship. From the safety of the Silver Star, Captain Hayes and his crew watched in stunned silence as the Orang Medan was consumed by an unholy inferno. Then, a massive explosion ripped through the vessel, sending debris flying for miles. When the smoke cleared, there was nothing left. The Orang Medan, its dead crew, and its dark secret were gone, swallowed by the sea. What happened on that ship? Was it a leak of hazardous cargo, like nerve gas or nitroglycerin? Some theories point to the unmarked containers, suggesting they held a deadly chemical agent. Others venture into more paranormal territory. Could the crew have encountered something not of this world? A malevolent entity that literally scared them to death? To this day, the story of the SS Orang Medan remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of the sea. An official record of the ship or the incident is nearly impossible to find, leading some to dismiss it as a mere sailor's tale. But for those who believe, it's a terrifying reminder that there are things in the vast, empty spaces of our world that we may never understand. What do you think happened to the crew of the Orang Medan? Let me know your theories in the comments below. Have you ever heard the chilling tale of the SS Orang Medan? It's a story that blurs the line between a real maritime disaster and a ghost story. A mystery that has baffled historians and terrified sailors for over 70 years. Prepare yourself, because we're about to dive deep into one of the most unsettling naval legends ever told. Our story begins in the dingy offices of Lloyd's of London in August 1947. Archivists, the keepers of the world's most respected maritime records, received an official report about a ship called the Silver Star. This report detailed a horrific discovery in the Strait of Malacca, but it created an even bigger problem. When they looked for the ship at the center of the incident, the SS Orang Medan, they found nothing. No construction records, no ownership papers, no insurance policy. For all official purposes, the ship simply did not exist. Harold Winthrop, a chief archivist with 40 years of service, couldn't believe it. Impossible, he declared. Every merchant ship has documentation, especially Dutch ships, they're meticulous. But there was nothing. It was as if the Orang Medan had materialized from the ocean itself, existed just long enough to meet a horrifying end, and then vanished back into legend. The Dutch authorities, still rebuilding after World War II, confirmed the same thing. No records. It was a ghost from the very beginning. While the bureaucrats in London scratched their heads, rumors were catching fire in the ports of Southeast Asia. In the smoky taverns of Singapore, sailors whispered about the ghost ship. In Jakarta, dockworkers made the sign of the cross at the mere mention of its name, and as the story spread, strange new details began to surface. A retired radio officer claimed he'd received the exact same distress call months earlier, in February 1947, word forward. "Everyone is dead. I die," followed by a frantic, jumbled Morse code. When he tried to trace the signal, it vanished. His report was dismissed as an equipment malfunction. It wasn't a mistake, he insisted. Years later, I heard that voice. If he was telling the truth, it meant the Orang Medan was in distress long before it was officially found. Then there was the story of Giuseppe Cordero, an Italian sailor who claimed to have seen the Orang Medan weeks after its supposed destruction. He said it was dawn. The sea was calm, and through his binoculars, he clearly read the name on the ship's hull. He ran to wake his captain, but when they returned to the deck, the ship was gone. Just gone. Even more disturbing, their radar showed nothing. Had it been a phantom, invisible to technology. Fishermen in the Philippines told tales of a blacked-out ship gliding silently past their shores. No lights, no engine noise. A port official in Sumatra swore he had docking papers for the ship from 1946. But when investigators came asking, the documents had mysteriously vanished from a locked file. Was this all just mass hysteria? Or was the Orang Medan a true specter of the sea? With folklore running wild, more rational minds tried to find a logical explanation, and all theories pointed to one question. What was the Orang Medan carrying? Dr. Friedrich Bohr, a German chemist who had worked on the fringes of Nazi chemical weapons programs, proposed a chilling theory. The crew's reported state frozen in terror, dead without any visible injuries, was consistent with exposure to a powerful nerve agent, sarin, tabin, or some experimental derivative, he wrote in a confidential report. Think about the time period, 1947. The world was secretly disposing of Japanese and German arsenals. Could the Orang Medan have been one of these undocumented ghosts? Freighters tasked with transporting a deadly cargo far from prying eyes. This would explain the secrecy, the sudden deaths, and even the final explosion. Nerve agents are volatile and could easily combust in the tropical heat. But the chemical weapons theory had its own problems. Nerve agents cause convulsions, foaming at the mouth, violent, visible signs of suffocation. The bodies on the Orang Medan were described differently. They were frozen in poses of pure, unadulterated terror, staring at something unseen. Their deaths were quiet. It was as if they had been literally frightened to death, a rare phenomenon known as fear-induced cardiac syncope. Something had scared them so profoundly, their hearts simply stopped. This detail didn't fit with any known chemical agent. The mystery was far from solved. 5 years later, in 1952, an American investigative journalist named Silvio Shirley decided he would crack the case. He was a determined man with deep military and intelligence connections. Traveling across Southeast Asia, he bribed officials and dug through dusty archives. And in Jakarta, he found it. A grainy, time-stained photograph. It showed a ship docked in the harbor, and painted clearly on its hull was the name, Orang Medan. The date on the back read March 1947, 3 months before the official incident. Here was the physical proof. But as soon as he found it, walls went up. Documents were lost. Officials became unavailable. Someone doesn't want this story told, Shirley wrote in his notes. He published his findings in a small magazine, but the story was largely ignored. Shirley became obsessed, even paranoid. In 1958, while investigating another ghost ship, he disappeared. His body was never found, and his complete notes on the Orang Medan, which supposedly contained explosive new evidence, vanished with him. Decades passed. The Orang Medan became just another spooky story. But then, in 1981, a retired Dutch naval intelligence officer named Anton Wijlebrief published his memoirs. In a chapter titled The Ships That Never Were, he described a top-secret post-war operation. They used unregistered ghost ships to transport sensitive materials. These ships were crewed by stateless refugees, men with no family, who wouldn't be missed if something went wrong. And Wijlebrief wrote, "Things did go wrong. Several times, he never named the Orang Medan, but the implication was terrifying. The ship wasn't an anomaly. It was part of a system, a fleet of deniable assets carrying cargo so dangerous, their governments would rather they, and their crews, simply cease to exist." The final, and perhaps most disturbing, piece of the puzzle came in 1995. A Dutch filmmaker tracked down the last surviving crew member of the Silver Star, the ship that found the Orang Medan. His name was Martin Kowalski, an 82-year-old man living in an Australian nursing home. At first, he refused to talk, but then he revealed something that wasn't in any official report. "They lied," Kowalski said. "We didn't find the ship by chance. We were given direct orders to find that ship and clean the scene." Clean, yes. Remove the evidence. He said that when they returned to their own ship, they weren't met by the regular Navy. They were met by men in civilian clothes, who confiscated their notes and cameras and made them sign secrecy documents under threat of treason. And then Kowalski described what he really saw. The horror on the dead men's faces was one thing, but there was something else. There were marks, he whispered. On the bodice, small burns, like dots, in patterns. We all saw Italiano. They looked like symbols. Before he could say more, the interview was cut short. Kowalski passed away 3 weeks later, taking the rest of his secrets to the grave. So what really happened on the SS Eurangmedon? Was it a ghost ship? A secret military operation gone wrong? Or something else entirely? The ocean gods had secrets well. But the story of the Eurangmedon serves as a chilling reminder that some truths may be too terrible to ever be brought to light. Let us know in the comments what you think happened to the Eurangmedon. Until next time, stay curious.